about your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made in this week. Now, as usual, I give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made in first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Ooh-wee! Let's get to it. Story number 1. What will become of the Chill Can property on the city of Youngstown's east side? After winning a $322,908 breach of contract dispute against the Chill Can property, MS Consultants Inc.'s next move is to attempt to sell the property on the east side in order to pay the debts, the legal debts, probably, if they win the suit. Well, they've already won the suit, I'm sure. The story is still developing. That's story number 1 made of this week. Story number 2, new officer in Boardman. Ryan Jones he took the oath to join Boardman's police lineup. That's big news for Boardman. Boardman and many surrounding communities have stayed in recent headlines in their search for a few good men and women to serve as police officers for the local community. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3, zoning changes in Canfield. In a dispute over a doghouse next to a gazebo housing new sound equipment, Canfield has stayed in recent headlines. The story, published June 16th by J.T. Whitehouse, the Vindicator goes on to describe how an abandoned house on the corner of Lisbon Street and Edwards Avenue was delayed because of asbestos abatement. Now, the article goes on to mention how asbestos issues held up demolition and begins by explaining the voting process. Now, so it goes on just explaining how the voting process has been taking place to get this all resolved. Now, although very brief, the article is very brief. It points out how many local council issues have been getting addressed. There's a lot of them, and then it held up when they're held up, they cause more questions to be asked about the complicated decisions being made locally by council members on critical decisions. Now, another most recent example is how in Youngstown, many council ward members and residents have been in constant headlines about money set aside for their wards in regards to COVID-19 relief money. Now, some people who say they were approved were later turned away, and this process is what got the story in, because even in Canfield, they're having problems with council members getting disputes figured out, and that's why the story made in this week, because council members are doing everything they can to try to get their wards taken care of, and this is why the story made in. Story number 3, big head. Story number 4, will grants help Wethersfield? Trustees in Wethersfield approved of allowing Administrator David Rowan to apply for a capital improvement program fund through the Ohio Public Works Commission for 2 road projects in the township. This is according to a Vindicator report published July 13th. If they get approved for the OPWC grant, it would help seal the deal with an extra 20% of the 80% that they already have. So as this grant would have given them 20% of the 80% that they already have. So they already have the money, but the extra money would account for the 20% that's left. Now, the road project is set to cost about $1 million. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Story number 5, the fight against drugs is still a top local concern. This story made it in after Governor Mike DeWine announced Wednesday that local drug task forces would all receive state support for their work to disrupt the drug trade and promote substance abuse awareness. Substance abuse awareness. Now, they also want to put some prevention and recovery in the mix, and awareness of the big cause of stop using drugs. Now, the Vindicator staff report published July 20th is brief, but still highlights a growing need for money and resources in the war on drugs. This was story number 5 made in this week. Story number 6, what is in issue 1 On July 14th, an article about how Democrats are rallying against State Issue 1 has caught the attention of locals. Now, the gripe, according to the report, is that if approved during the August 8th special election, it would take away the majority rule. Now, the article goes on to say that if approved, all future constitutional amendment ballot issues would need at least 60% support to pass rather than the current simple majority, which includes a proposed abortion rights amendment on the November 7th ballot. This is what has caused the most recent stir-up in this developing story. That's why story number 6 almost made to the top 2 this week. Issue 1, big headline. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I am doing this for one thing: passion, and I have a desire to try to be an asset to the people around me. So I'm doing this to keep people informed, and that's why I'm giving you these top 2 stories. Story number 7: crime, death, and violence is still a hot topic in Youngstown. No visible signs of foul play, but another sad ending after a body was found on the 7,800 block in Boardman. This is sad. Now, the report published by the Vindicator July 20th says that the missing Boardman man in his 30s is suspected of suffering from substance abuse and possible depression. This has been a consistent problem, thus making this a top headline in today's drug-crazy world. That's why story number 7 almost made it to the top this week. Big headline. Story number 8 and the top local headline and developing news story that made it this week for you. Step right up. Get informed. I dare you to. I double dog dare you to get informed. Story number 8. Fire levy in Austintown. A $3.0 million levy to support fire and emergency EMS services in Austintown adds to another local community looking to levies to help foot the bill for emergency services. The additional $2 million in annual funds to help the fire department overcome what the report says is a $1.5 million budget deficit. Now, rising costs and the consistent need for emergency services is what got this story in. Campbell, Poland, and Youngstown have also made recent headlines in regards to seeking levies to address their emergency shortfalls. This is becoming a major thing in not only just locally but across the United States. That's what number 8 made it to the top this week: emergency services. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that I made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back. Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Aunt Tasha, she said that you can be dumb and still make a lot of money.
Don't be deceived, okay? Just get the work done. Get your work done, graduate, you'll be successful. Don't be deceived. I told you that. Now hit the books.
Mom's not coming back, is she, Dad?
What test scores again?
Every teacher is in here day and night, and it's not our fault.
Uriah aced her random proficiency test because you helped her. She's the first student in this city's district to ace that test.
So did he pay?
No, the pool only paid half.
Apply the pressure.
Hey, get that mess out of here!
Titi, you picked this district, Titi. I'm going to Puerto Rico. Me voy a Puerto Rico, Titi. Cálmate. Calm down. ¿Cómo que me calme? How am I calm down? You had us come here, Titi. How can I protect myself? That's all I need for you to help me with. How do I protect myself?
Oh, they're not going to hurt you.
If this is what I get for being a good student and acing a test, I'd rather have failed.
I never told you that being good would be easy.
Clear target, cannot miss.
Home for his little girl. Take me.
They're in danger.
won't tell you how this is gonna end, Laura, but my history professor once told me, in order to prevent a genocide, you first have to kill the dictator.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. Folks, this week I was thinking about this depression thing. You know, we had some tragic accidents over the year of people having depression, suicidal thoughts, and it made me wonder, you know, how does this happen? And it can happen in an instant. You know, you could be in a good mood. You know, somebody could just crush your heart. You could be in a relationship, and somebody could say, just, it's over. It's over, Johnny. It's over. And these thoughts of neglect and hearing the constant no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. You have to get out. Go do something. These constant feelings seem to be driving people on the verge of depression. So I've come to learn, folks, that everything seems to have a purpose. Some people like to watch TV. Some people like to read books. Some people like to go to the movies. Some people even like to watch pornography. Ooh. Some people even use drugs. Some people smoke cigarettes. Some people get high. But this week, the constant focus on the people doing the caretaking and listening to those who feel like they want to do something harmful to themselves is what got this topic in. Could you imagine being a psychologist and you're listening? And they're telling you their deepest desires, their deepest thoughts. And you have to cope with the reality that everybody has to pay the bills, and this person may leave your office and never come back. Folks, the Chronicles of Mediation continue. I've made a song for those just like me who are human and may be suffering from either Trump depression or Biden depression or just relationship depression. I've got a song for you. It's called Love Thy Brother. When you feel down and out, yeah, and you don't have a dime left, yeah, do something exciting, exotic, and find your inner self. And if it gets too bad, read a book about love. Woo! I was down and out this week, and I thought about my fellow brother. I thought about myself. I was lonely. And I picked up a book about being loved. And now I feel extra special. And I'm back in the game, folks. So I hope you stay in the game too. Defeat depression. Defeat the anxiety. Defeat the suicidal thoughts with loving yourself. So let's waste no time. Love thyself. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Speaking of love thyself, what AI is doing to those who own intellectual property. Folks, this is a serious story. This is serious. If you're in the intellectual property business, then there is a high possibility that you've been used to AI abusing your intellectual property. Now, one NPR report claims that thousands of authors have urged. They've been arguing against AI. They've been urging AI companies to stop using their work without their permission. The article informs the reader of the struggles of being a full-time writer and highlights the declining income of writers. Last year, the median income of a full-time writer was $23,000. That's a decline by 42% between 2009 and 2019. This story is a must-read for writers attempting to get their piece of the pie, and could explain why many writers are on strike right now and why Hollywood is shut down. This story is still developing, but we may need them to entice our imagination. Big head. Story number 2. Medicaid back in the headlines. One CNBC report says that nearly 3 million people have been cut from Medicaid coverage. Ooh. The article published July 18th states that about 75% of the 2.7 million people who have lost Medicaid coverage across 32 states and Washington, including Washington, D.C., were booted from the program because they did not complete the process to renew their coverage. This is a word-for-word bullet point, folks, highlighting the main talking point that they're eligible, but they just didn't renew. How did that happen? The article also highlights the COVID-19 meltdown that could have just blinded them from renewing their policies. Let's just hope that this story catches those needing coverage's attention, because there's a lot of people, low-income people, who need that Medicaid. Big headline. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Could it be the drugs and alcohol? Folks, homelessness seems to be unable to cure, according to an NPR headlines. And on the headlines, there's 4 reasons why they're stating this in the headlines. 4 reasons why there may be no end in sight for the homeless problem. Here's number 1. They're saying that they're referring to the numbers in number 1. They're referring to numbers because there are a high number of homeless people. That means that it's just so big that they don't see a solution. Number 2, cites how rent is much higher than it used to be. So most homeless people can't afford a place to stay. That's another factor. Number 3, as it could be about zoning laws and local opposition towards homelessness, while also making it hard to build housing for low-income renters. This is another one. And number 4 talks about how pandemic aid programs that helped keep many people housed are winding down. If you want to look at more of this topic, I did a documentary on a local city called Canton, Ohio, about how this low-income housing unit has just been falling apart. So there's really been no investments really in a lot of people's towns into low-income housing, and that could be one factor in story number 3. So if you want to check out the documentary, it's on the website. Now, the article leaves out another factor causing homelessness, and that is the fact that a lot of addicts just can't kick the bad habits, thus making them unable to hold a job or get back on track to get back into the market of the job market. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Story number 4. What is the migration plan? At the moment, it looks like there is a $500,000 potential legal immigration plan. That means legal immigration. Now, the report published by CBS News says that in less than 2 years, the administration has allowed at least 541,000 migrants to enter the U.S. through the Immigration Parole Authority. Now, this is a program that allows federal officials the power to authorize the entry of foreigners who lack visas. Now, this is a unique strategy, according to the report, because it has allowed officials to divert migration away from the southern border by offering would-be migrants a legal and safe alternative to the U.S. Now, with the help of smugglers and entering the country unlawfully. So it's just giving them an alternate route, basically like making a deal. Now, according to the report, it has also given the administration a faster way to resettle refugees as it attempts to rebuild a resettlement system gutted by what the article calls drastic Trump-era cuts. Now, this is a long report but seems to state the obvious strategy of the Biden administration. This story is still developing. The article concludes by explaining how offenders will be removed if they do not comply with a lawful pathway to citizenship. There are a lot of people speculating against this report, so there's a lot going on. But the story number 4 is a big headline, but it talks about basically this administration's immigration, could be their immigration or migration plan. That's story number 4 made it this week. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't you go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Another interesting topic that kind of caught my attention was the fact that these computers, everybody's talking about computers and artificial intelligence, and how computers could be possibly one day put us all out of a job. And I mean, could you imagine the world with no computers? I mean, I'm on the phone with the bank, and I'm on the phone with people arguing about what a computer has done, and the person on the other line is like, "Well, I can't do nothing." I'm like, "Well, you have to do something. They can't do. They have all these people sitting in the office, and they can't do anything to the computer. The computer is doing everything, telling you how much you got in the bank, shutting your bank account off, shutting your bank account on, and people are just sitting in the office not doing anything." I'm sure you get the point. The intergalactic universe is taking over. Let's get to it, folks. Let's get to it. Story number 5 is cuts to rail water infrastructure spending possible. The article by the Washington Post begins by explaining 2 years after approving a bipartisan $1.2 trillion law, Republicans are now trying to scale back the spending that they approved. This is according to the article. Now, the article goes on to point out the country's aging infrastructure problem while also highlighting a growing need for investments. Now, first, folks, last ticket, I jumped on the Republican bandwagon. I have been supporting Republicans, but there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason. People are saying that the Democrats have just lost their way. So this story is another example of the seesaw battle going on in Washington, D.C. We all have a decision to make. Now, whatever the pushback reasons are, the article succeeds at making this a real issue, while also stating that there needs to be some unified decisions made on improving the country's crumbling infrastructure. Folks, whether Democrat or Republican, something has to be done. I'm still voting for Ben Carson. The story is still developing. Just kidding. Big headline. No, I'm not. Story number 6. Janet Yellen says no recession expected. Folks, The Hill has a report published July 17th stating that despite slower growth in China, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says that she doesn't expect a recession. Now, the report goes on to cite her confidence that the economy is on a good path to curb inflation without significantly weakening the strong local labor market, which has been taking place. Now, Yellen also stated that wage growth is moderating and inflation is subsiding. Now, the report is worth a read with some very important job stats worth calculating to get an idea of what she seems to be so optimistic about. That's why story number 6 almost made it to the top 2. Some people on the verge of serious poverty, and so I'm just glad she seems optimistic. Big story number 7 and the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week, folks. I'm doing something positive with my time. Don't be mad at me. I do tend to try to vote for the candidate that is better for this country or anybody. And right now, it seems like the Republican Party is talking a good game. Democrats are on the fence. Democrats are in the White House. But right now, we need somebody to get things in order. in straight order. But right now there seems to be a lot of confusion in America. I don't know if I want to go right. I don't know if I want to go left. I want to stay in the middle. I don't know if I want to go right or left. So let's get to it. Story number 7. Story number 7. The evolving job market, folks. Speaking of Democrats and Republicans, why so many wealthy people say ditch college is what got this story, this MoneyWise report in. MoneyWise. Now, the report states how companies are shedding the traditional degree requirements on job postings. That means they're just shedding the college requirements in some categories. Now, the ongoing labor shortage and the fact that the U.S. economy added 339,000 jobs in May, while also citing the $9.9 million job openings across the country, is what has this story trending. This could be why employers are gearing their interest towards skilled-based employment. It means, like, if you've got a skill, you've got a job. The story is still developing. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2 this week, because we're talking jobs and we're talking economics. But some people say people just don't want to work. That's why it's such a big story number 8, and the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. Keep you informed, folks. That's my number 1 objective. Whether I win, lose, or draw, whether my candidate wins or loses, I'm still going to try to get in here to keep you informed. Story number 8, the cost increase problem. Oh boy. Axios has a piece highlighting how several pandemic-era safety net programs will be coming to an end this fall. The article goes on to mention bigger student loan payments, child care, health care, and food increases. These are all predicting years, ongoing with years of inflation to come. Now, if 500,000 people are set to lose their food assistance and the recent debt ceiling agreement, which expanded work requirements to beneficiaries, this would put about another 750,000 people at risk, according to the report that references. According to the report, this was estimates were references. It was done by the Center on this report of references of estimates was done by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. So they've basically made these estimates saying that about all these people would be at risk. So the story shows a realistic picture that many may not be ready for when it comes to economics. But let's hope that this turns out. Let's hope that Janet Yellen's optimism is right. Maybe the economy could take an upswing and everything would go back down to a penny, even little cakes at the store. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I hope you guys something on today's program. I always get something out doing the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I am just a mediator, the man in the middle, navigating your stories to keep people informed. If you want to show us some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor the program, or stop at the store at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio, and buy something in the store. Well, folks, I am out of here. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 or more stories just to keep you informed. Thank you for tuning into the Media this week with me, Brian West. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.